we jumped on the front runner, and then mission president came and picked us up in a bunch of vans. So first impressions of my trainer are easy because he ran up and hugged me, and like we spun around in a circle, and it was great. And that was pretty much like that whole first transfer. I was like, wee, what's going on? I have no idea about any of this, but I'm having a great time and doing good. My mission president, it was just like my first impression is my only impression of him, that he is the most consistent man that I've ever met in my entire life. And that from day one until my last day in the field, and since I've seen him since, he's just this present person. Like wherever he is, he's there with you. And it was incredible just like to be with someone who cared so deeply about me, even though he'd never met me before, and continued to care about me throughout my mission. It was very, very interesting. I remember my first day, we used to have big transfer meetings where all the missionaries would come, and then they'd hold up signs and be like, here's where your zone is, and you'd run around in the parking lot and just try and figure out where everybody is, and they refined that over, but it was crazy bonkers. I just had no idea what was going on. I had no idea who all these people were. I had no idea where I was going. I knew who my companion was. I knew what car to put my luggage in, but that's about it. And then when we got to our apartment and we unpacked and we went and met a family and had dinner with them. I have very, very fond memories of the dinners that they made. And past that, it's just a blur. It's like that first week, I probably fell asleep in lessons at least twice, and I was like, froze up at least 4 or 5 times, and it was just, because my first area, we were serving 3 stakes, 19 wards, and I had absolutely no idea how to do that. I was just lost, and it was just like my trainer just did everything, and basically he taught everything, and he scheduled everything, and he worked with everybody, and I was just there to be like, yes, I am a second witness of what my companion has said, because I couldn't really do anything else. But it was a really, really just trying experience. It was a really fast experience. Like before I knew it, I was writing my parents and reading letters, and I was like, whoa, that was the fastest week of my life, and I have no idea what happened. So I served from 2013 to 2015, July of 2013 to 2015. I served in Holiday, Utah, then Cottonwood Heights, Utah, then back to Holiday and Cottonwood Heights. And then I went to Camas and Oakley and Marion and Peoa and Camas. I already said Camas twice, yeah, I know that. Those are tiny, tiny communities, and they're my favorite places in the entire world. Then I came back to the valley, served in Mill Creek, East Mill Creek North Stake. Lovely, lovely place, less than a square mile. It was great. And then I kind of had, my last assignment in the mission was kind of really different. Like, I mean, I don't normally talk about this because like everyone and their mom has like leadership in mission, but I was a traveling assistant in my mission for the last 2 transfers. And what that entailed is that I went to every one of the district leaders, and I like just served with them for 2 or 3 days. And so I went like through the entire mission and like served in almost every single area. And that was really, really interesting because there were just so many areas and so many like entire townships that I'd never even set foot in. And now I was part of it, and I was going with these missionaries who knew what they were doing and trying to help them, and just seeing really all of the people that we serve and not just the ones that I got to see. So when I was there, it was east of State Street, and then Cottonwood Heights up to the avenues, and then it kind of like blossomed out into Summit County, which is Park City, Camas, Colville, and then it had the 3 southwest counties of Wyoming as well. And that was like when we got the mission call and we looked at the area map, we're like, oh, what is he going to do in Salt Lake? Like, oh no, he's got a big chunk of Wyoming. That's good. He'll probably serve a lot of time there. There's one zone in the whole area that we have in Wyoming, because it's just desolate and it's wonderful. Wyoming was the promised land. People really liked getting out of the Salt Lake Valley and getting up to the more rustic side of our mission boundaries. It was a lovely, lovely place, except in winter, because it would kill you. Like some missionaries have stories of running into Jehovah's Witnesses missionaries and like having confrontations with them, but the closest I ever got was someone said, oh yeah, I saw some Jehovah's Witnesses missionaries 3 streets up, and when we went to go check, be like, oh man, we never seen them before, they were gone. So, but it's really, I would always characterize it as the spiritual desert, because you're either hot or you're cold. You're either in the gospel and you're going to church and you're doing all sorts of good and you're loving people, or you're at least going to church and maybe not any else of the above, or you just are not at all interested in that. It was just like the people who were interested and they'd like get baptized like that, or they were already members, or they would come back really quickly. And the people who weren't interested let you know immediately and sometimes aggressively that they were not interested. And so it was a very just strange climate to work in, because you'd be walking down the street and you get people that drive by in trucks and they'd be like, "Hail Satan," and you'd be like, "Oh," and then you have in a car 10 seconds later going like, "Hey missionaries, what's up?" They're like rock stars to the members. Like you'd go into restaurants and 4 people would try and pay for your meal, or you'd be crossing the street and some kid would just flip you off and kick the front of the car. And it's like, what in the world is going on with these people? Why do they always have opinions about us? Why can't they just like... It was always so nice when you'd knock on a door of somebody that just moved in and be like, "Oh yeah, I'm from Nebraska. Never really heard of Mormons before." You're like, "What the heck? Do you want to hear a message about Jesus Christ?" And to be like, "Oh yeah, come on in." Like, this is beautiful. They're untainted by the hatred. Or, I mean, maybe not hatred, but I mean, there's plenty of that. But I'd say that the majority of the people who weren't interested in what we had to say were very polite about it. They were just not interested, and they wouldn't lead you on. They wouldn't invite you in under false pretenses. They'd just be like, "Elders, I appreciate what you're doing, but not interested in talking religion." Be like, "Oh, dude, that's absolutely fine. We appreciate you letting us know." And it was just the very small minority that would swear us off porches or try and hit us with cars. That didn't happen very often, but it's the land of extremes. It's what the desert is. Don't get discouraged, because when you find people that are ready, they're ready. They're just good to go, and they progress quickly, and that's like the vast majority of what I found is the people that we would find to teach are ready for it, and they've been prepared and they move quickly, or some friend brings their member out of nowhere. You're like, "Oh, we have no one to teach." And if you just keep working, like the Lord puts people in your path to teach. The thing about Salt Lake City is we never tracked it. Finding was the perennial challenge. I'm not sure if I used that word correctly, but we're just going to go with it. It was always so hard to find people to teach. But at the same time, it wasn't, because most of the people that I taught on my mission didn't come from my efforts. They came from them just dropping into our laps. And it was just, you be diligent, you work hard, you accept that not everyone is going to like you, not everyone is going to accept your message. Probably the majority of the people that you try to talk to aren't going to be interested. But as long as you keep going and as long as you have faith, then the Lord will give you people to teach. He will give you your heart's desire. If you want to teach, if you truly want to bring people to Christ, He'll put people in your path that need that and are ready for it. So we have the Salt Lake Temple. It's technically not in our mission because it's in the Temple Square mission, which is a completely separate mission, 200 sisters in like a block, which is kind of crazy. It's beautiful. We would always go to the Jordan River Temple, which is in the South Mission, but I mean, you just go to the temple. It is what it is. Wards and stakes are very small. Like my first area, 3 stakes, 19 wards. It was not large. It was not large at all. My smallest area was one stake, 5 wards, and it was less than a square mile, and that was the East Mill Creek North stake, and it was great. They gave us a car for whatever reason. It's just like, we have the smallest area, maybe in the mission, and okay, we'll just go with it. Sacrament meeting attendance is, as you might have guessed, numerous, just because there's so many members everywhere. Sometimes a ward is like 3 blocks and 90% of the homes are members who are active and they come to church every Sunday. And it's a lovely thing. It's beautiful, but that also means that the ward boundaries don't always have great prospects for missionaries who want to teach and who want to find people to baptize or people to reactivate. The biggest difference is when you go into Wyoming or you go into Park City or anywhere in Summit County, is the areas get much larger and much closer to where they are outside of Utah. Like, I come from rural Nevada, and my ward was my entire town plus like neighboring tiny towns, and so it was big. And when I went out and served in Camas, like, the wards were still not anywhere near that size, but like my area of 5 wards was probably about the size of my ward back home. And then if you went to Wyoming, then it was like, okay, we're starting to get to where the wards are hundreds of miles across, and you have to be able to drive 4 hours to get to the north part of your area. And it's like, okay, all right, here we go. This is a little more what I had in mind when I was signing up for this mission thing, you know? It definitely seemed like the people were more open outside of the Salt Lake Valley, which is understandable, because when you're a non-member in Salt Lake Valley, you're surrounded by everybody who just wants you to change. And that can definitely engender feelings of bitterness, defensiveness, that is like totally understandable. It can sometimes be really annoying when you're just like, I've heard it. Okay? I've had missionaries over 3 times, and my neighbors ask me every other week, and it's just like, let me live my life. It's like, okay, I get that. Out in the more rural areas, you don't get that as much, just because there's not as much people, not as many people, not as many members, maybe more members. I'm not exactly sure about the demographics. But they just seem more open and more willing to accept help. Like, what I really liked doing in Oakley was service, because it was actually more than just like pulling weeds or raking leaves. But did I say pulling leaves? Pulling weeds or raking leaves. I mean, there was one time that we went and helped a guy with his personal logging business. There's one time we helped put up this like 18-foot swing set. That was a little sketch. Helped tons of families move, like remodel houses. 2 weeks before I went there, they helped castrate cattle of one of the members. It was like, what in the world? This is crazy. But it was just I think that's kind of getting away from the missionary aspect of it. It was just like, people had generally more open hearts. And in Wyoming especially, like, there's just the level of humility was like, here's the valley, and like, here's outside of the valley, and like, there's Wyoming. But at the same time, it's like, in the valley, the people you would teach would be like super humble and ready for it. And it was just, it's hard to characterize, but that's probably the best that I can do for that. P-Day, study, email, shop, come home, get changed, go play sports with the zone. That was pretty much it. That was part of the course, is you just go and play sports. And everyone would get together, and there'd be people like on stage just writing letters or like playing piano or something. It was just like, you got together with the zone and you do all sorts of stuff. And outside of the valley, like when I was serving in Camas, it was pretty much the same thing. Like, we'd go and we'd do email, and we'd either go shopping, or we'd go shopping when we all drove to Park City, because that was where most of our zone was. And we'd just go there and we'd hang out with them and play sports and write letters and shop, and that was pretty much it. Lots of casseroles in all their varieties. Casseroles are Mormons' go-to for feeding missionaries. And it's just basically throw good stuff together, put it in the oven, give it to the missionaries, they'll eat it. And I mean, it's true, but it's also like, we'd get pizza all the time. Members would just be like, elders, come over, we're having Papa John's. We're having all this pizza is beautiful. And they're like, okay, we'll never say no to that. But lots of spaghetti. There was one time on my mission that I got just salad for dinner, but that was a common occurrence for sisters, and I mourned for them regularly because they would just come to like district meetings or zone meetings, and they would just talk about like, yeah, this whole week, just salad, nothing but salad. And they just have this glazed look in their eye that they just wanted a steak, and that's it. We're like, sorry, sisters, but have you confirmed with the Allens for Olive Garden tonight? And they'd just be like, oh. But I mean, it's basically Midwestern fare. If you've eaten in Utah, you know what it's like. Lots of Jell-O, but then as time progressed, the Jell-O started like gradually disappearing. So I don't know if that was like a culture shift that happened without me really being aware, but it never went away. Like there's definitely much more Jell-O than normal, but at the beginning of my mission, there was a lot more, I think, than near the end. This is stupid. It really is. And you're going to be like, oh, okay, why is he laughing so much about this? But the first day that I was with one of my companions, Elder Strain, we were just driving and we stopped on this bridge, and this was up in Camas, and he pointed out the window and he said, "There's something." I was like, what? And there's just a porcupine just waddling into the bushes on the right side of the road. And that's it. And I just think about that probably more often than is normal. Just there's something. Just the way that he said it was super funny. No, I mean, probably ran over a couple bunnies while I was up there. Saw a bald eagle one time. That was cool. It was in winter time, and I was like, dude, that's a bald eagle. I'm like, what in the world? And I tried digging out my camera, but it was too cold to turn it on. I was like, no, why? There was one time that an elderly woman swore my companion and I off her porch, but I mean, like, I felt afraid for my life, but it probably wasn't in any sort of danger. I had one companion early on in my mission that we just didn't really like click super well, and it was just hard because we were both new and we were both like butting heads against each other, and the first couple weeks of that were just like, oh man, because like I was training him, but because we'd been getting so many missionaries, like I'd barely been out, and it was just like, you know, what are you doing? You think you're so much better than me. It's like, I don't, but at the same time, I guess I do. And it was just a really, really hard time until we sat down and we're like, this is what I'm feeling. This is how we're feeling. And we decided that, you know, we just need to see each other as equals, that, you know, I can make decisions that just need to be made by somebody, but that doesn't mean like I'm in charge or I'm better than anybody else. And after we sat down and talked about it, then we were able to move forward, and we just loved each other, and like the 2 transfers after that were just so much fun, even though we still had no idea what we were doing. But it was great, and we saw a lot of success because we were working hard and we loved each other. And that happened with like almost every single one of my companions, is that, you know, we'd butt heads and we'd come to a boil and we'd talk, and then everything after that was just like awesome and wonderful. And it was just so like there wasn't just a one bad time, and it wasn't like because of a certain area or a certain companion. It's just that change always brings difficulty, and talking through that is what helped me get through those difficulties every single time. There was, I think my favorite P-Day in the mission, my companion and I, Elder Quinton, we put together a zone-wide not speedball, it was a zone-wide tournament for this game that we'd made up, like this sport that we'd made up. Chairball. It was great. And we got jerseys from the stake that we were serving in, and we got like ref shirts and whistles, and we got these little trophies from Joann's and filled them with jelly beans and had a label gun with the names of the people on it. And we had this whole tournament, and everyone in our our zone came and they played this stupid game that we made up, and we had a ton of fun. And the winning team, we had the bright idea of having them stand on a table that collapsed underneath them, and everyone was fine. One sister got her ankle cut. Sorry, Sister Knight, again. I still feel bad about that. But it was so much fun, and it was a lot of work to get it together, but it was just great to do something for everybody rather than just going and playing basketball in a gym or going and playing flag football or something. It was just a ton of fun. I learned the value of communication, just like I was talking about, being unified with my companions and being able to accept criticism and give it constructively, and being able to change with someone together is one of those really big skills that I pulled out of that. Because I probably thought I was hot stuff right at the beginning, and I thought I knew what I was doing, but there's just so many times that I had to have someone tell me hey, you're not super good at this. I'm like, oh, yeah, you're right. And just, yeah, give it to me and I'll accept it, and I'll grow from it, and I'll become better. And it just gave me a lot of opportunities to be able to talk with people about problems rather than just ignoring them or hoping they'll go away, but being willing to sit down and being comfortable with sharing what I feel and being able to articulate what I want from a certain relationship. Now it's starting to sound like I'm talking about dating, but I'm not, except it's totally applicable. But I also learned the value of forgetting about yourself, about your comfort zone, about just understanding that it's not about me, and not just mission-wise, but that my life isn't really about what I want, but it's about what God wants. That's really the biggest skill, the biggest life lesson, and just life-changing everything that I got. It's that when it comes down to it, I do what God wants me to do. That's what brings me true happiness. That's what brings me lasting peace and joy. And I wouldn't have learned that as quickly without my mission. And I'm not sure if I would have learned that without the experiences that I had. So I'm really grateful for that. There was one time when my companion and I were coming home, and it was late. It was 9:15 or something, and we were walking up towards our house, and we saw a fire in the backyard of our neighbors, and we're like, oh, what's going on here? And there's this guy just sitting next to this campfire, just squatting down, kind of staring blankly into it. And we made ourselves known. We're like, hey, what's up? And he's like, oh, hi, elders, how's it going? And I think he was a member, but he wasn't active, hadn't been active for decades, and he just kind of unloaded all of what he was going through, just all of these crazy trials that he was going through, and he got a call and he got fired right there when we were talking with him. We're like, oh my goodness, what is going on with this guy? And it's just, we had an opportunity to testify of the Savior's love, and he was really skeptical about that, of course. And what made me think about sharing this experience is that it doesn't really have a happy ending. We didn't get his number and then he got baptized a month later, or come back to the church or anything like that. We didn't really see him again after that. But I felt the love of God, and I felt that Jesus Christ really cared about him in that moment. And it was a very solid spiritual experience. It was something that my companion and I walked away from, and we're really glad that happened. We don't know what he's going to do with it, but we know that we did what was right, and that we did everything that we could, and we testified, and we taught what we knew was true. And we know that if he turns to Christ, that he'll support him in his trials, but at the same time, it's up to him. And it's just kind of not not what I usually think of when I think, oh yeah, let's share spiritual experiences, but it's something that was real. And it's something I think that goes to show, or is a good example for me, that being a missionary isn't always about results. It isn't always about people changing because of what you say. It's about inviting them to do so. And I'm sure like people hear that all the time, but it's really true. Spiritual experiences don't have to have anybody else change except for you to be meaningful spiritual experiences. I know that the gospel is true. I know that it is what God wants us to do. It's how he wants me personally to live my life, and I receive direction in that. Am I perfect? No, not even close. It's something that is a continual struggle against myself about what I know that I should do and what I want to do, but sometimes I want to do lesser things more. And it's tough, but it's something that everybody goes through. Everybody struggles. No one's perfect. I think my testimony lies not in the mission, not really at all in the mission. My testimony in the gospel of Jesus Christ lies in the gospel of Jesus Christ, that anybody can gain as strong of a testimony as any missionary on earth without serving a mission. It's about reading the scriptures. It's about searching for Christ in that, of hearing his words, of living his words. I think that is really the only way that you can gain a true testimony of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Sure, you can feel that it's right, but you don't know it's right until you live it and until you see what happens because of those choices. And that's something that you can do whether you're a missionary or not. You can live the gospel. You can live the higher law. You can choose to consecrate your life to Christ. With a name tag or not. and it's something that is where real spiritual power comes from, and where real spiritual strength comes from, and real testimony. I would just see, if you want to know that missionaries aren't perfect, go on a mission, because they are far from it. And I would see missionaries that struggle with that want to be there, and that want to have spiritual experiences and want to grow their testimony and want all of these things. But then they wouldn't put in the effort that was necessary to do it, because it requires a lot of sacrifice. A mission is really just preparation for how to live like that in more open circumstances with more freedom. To understand that real freedom comes from the gospel of Jesus Christ is kind of rambling. I'm not exactly sure where I was. Real freedom comes from the gospel of Jesus Christ. I know that, and it's something that you can learn for yourself. And yeah, that's my testimony. Consecration is really important. Learn more about it. Read the Book of Mormon every single day for the rest of your life. That's just advice for everybody. But President Monson is inspired. He's true. And he's asked us to do that for a reason. And prophets, every single prophet, has asked us to read the Book of Mormon, because guess what? It's really important to know. I don't think anything else other than that, like any single piece of advice other than reading the Book of Mormon and really reading it, really studying it, really connecting with it, not just, going through the motions, being like, okay, I read a chapter today. You've got to invest yourself in the Book of Mormon. You've got to find out for yourself if it is true, and then live by it. It's not a matter of just reading the Book of Mormon every day. It's about living the Book of Mormon every day, and that also involves reading it. And that would be like my number one piece of advice to anybody ever. I am grateful for my mission. I'm grateful for the time that I was able to spend, and I'm grateful that my Heavenly Father is able to strengthen me to face everything that I was able to face. I was talking with some friends about this today, about those who aren't able to serve a full mission. Because, there are some elders and sisters in my mission who went home after a few months or after a year or something like that. And there's this really big stigma in the church that we don't discuss very often, that if you go home early from a mission, it's because you were disobedient. And that's not true. That's not true at all. Some people just aren't able to serve a full-time mission. And that's okay. That's absolutely fine. Because it's the gospel of Jesus Christ that's what transforms you. And I mean, living the gospel of Jesus Christ involves missionary work. Don't ever forget that. And don't think I'm downplaying missionary service at all. I'm not. But going on a mission for 2 years isn't what transforms people, because I have seen people who have come in and from day 1 to day 730 haven't changed at all. And they went home exactly the same that they were. It's living the gospel of Jesus Christ that changes you. And that's what I learned for myself. And that is why my experience in missionary work is what changed me. It's not about getting out of your comfort zone. It's not about talking to people. It's not about knocking on doors and not being afraid to invite people to do things. That's not what it's about. Everybody has different strengths. You might not be able to do that your entire mission until like the last day, and you're like, oh, I street contacted somebody on my own, and I did it boldly, and it's like, that's great. It's not invalidated by not doing it the previous times at all. But God understands that sometimes the stresses and the pressures of living as a missionary, as a full-time missionary, aren't for everybody. Because I've seen elders and sisters that have gone home after like 3 or 4 months, like I talked about in the beginning, that they're kind of stinkers. They weren't doing right, and they weren't being obedient, and they weren't living the missionary life. But then when they went home, and I see them now, and I see like on Facebook or other places, and they're doing well, they're getting married in the temple, they're active, and they're happy. And that's what I see. And that's what you can't hide, is you can't hide the joy that the gospel brings you, because they're living the gospel. And what's unfortunate about that is that they can never really bring up their mission experience without somebody judging them for it. They can't say, oh yeah, I served in the Salt Lake City mission for about 6 months before I had to go home because I have like a mental illness, like I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, or just for whatever reason I couldn't handle it, but I'm doing great now. And there's always going to be like that feeling that they're being looked down upon, that people think less of them. And I just wish that wasn't the case. I just wish that we would accept people for their best effort like Jesus Christ does. Like I have no doubt in my mind that Jesus Christ accepted those months or those weeks or even those days of their effort if afterwards they still live the gospel. Even if not. The gospel of Jesus Christ has transformative power. Being somewhere in the world for 2 years doesn't. And I know that that's true. Christ will strengthen you for your challenges, and he'll help you through whatever you need to do in the way that he wants you to do it. And just kind of going back to what I was talking about, that if you feel like a mission isn't for you, give it a try anyway. Give it your best shot and actually try. Because you'd be surprised what you can overcome with Jesus Christ. And sometimes it's overcoming it at home and not in a mission, and that's fine. I just know that Jesus Christ can help anybody overcome anything that they're going through. I know that for fact. And that nobody can tell you what your mission experience should be like. Only Christ can. And so seek personal revelation. Ask God if he wants you to serve a mission. And probably more often than not, at least for guys, the answer is going to be yes. And for girls, a lot of times it's yes, but sometimes it's no. My sister hasn't served a mission, and she's not planning on serving a mission. And that's absolutely fine, because she sought revelation on that. And she knows that that's the right thing to do. And it's just a lot of, like going back to people looking down on people for whatever reason. Don't look down on anybody for anything. Just accept them, love them. That's what Jesus Christ does. Jesus Christ loves us, no matter what. He wants us to be better, but he understands that we have our agency and we have our choices, and you just have to love. Just love.
I remember when they used to have these big meetings where everybody would come in for transfers or transfer meetings. And it was like this big deal, like who your trainer was going to be. And I remember all of us new missionaries were sitting up there and we're like, oh, like, which one is going to be our trainer? Like, so nervous. And so I remember it was my turn. They called me and they're like, and your trainer's going to be, and they told me who my trainer was. And it was this sweet, sweet Samoan sister who was crazy. I love her to pieces. But I remember being like, oh my goodness, like on the ride home and for the rest of the week. And we ended up getting put into a trio after about a week with another Polynesian sister. And so that was super fun. But I remember the first week just feeling super overwhelmed and just like generally like scared to like pretty much do anything. We got to our first area. I started off in Cottonwood Heights, and I loved it up there. It was beautiful. I served in Cottonwood Heights for almost 6 months, and I was super sad to leave it. But yeah, so I got with my first companion, and we got to meet our mission president, and President Eberhart was my mission president at the time, and his eyes were like piercing into your soul. But they were the sweetest. And I remember just feeling so loved by my trainer and by my other companion in that transfer. And, you know, it was hard, but it was definitely amazing. I remember just every time I spoke, like just like bubbling with the Spirit, I was like, oh, this is so cool. So I served for my 18 months from September 2015 till April 2017. I started off my mission in Cottonwood Heights, and then in the middle of a transfer, I was sent out to Rock Springs, Wyoming. That's the border of the mission over on the east side. And then from there, I went to Sugar House, and then I served in Mill Creek. And then from then on, I was in Murray for the rest of my mission in a couple of different areas. Loved those areas. Our mission also covered Park City, covered Camas, Evanston in Wyoming, Lyman, Green River, and like Holiday area. I'm probably missing some, but that's the gist of it. Yeah, okay, the climate. So Utah, if you don't know this, maybe it was just me. It is so cold in the winter here. The snow is just like forever high, and like tracking in it is just super fun experiences. Let's see, church history. There's a lot of history in the Salt Lake Valley, and even in Wyoming that the mission goes into. There's a lot of Mormon trail markings that I got to see, and so that was cool. But there's a lot of rich Mormon culture here in Salt Lake. Yeah, you find a lot of people that are pioneer stock that born and raised here, and so were their grandparents, and then their grandparents crossed the plains, and it's really cool to see so many people who have just been able to pass this gospel throughout their generations to be able to stand strong with it. I think a big misconception about serving in Utah, like not even in Salt Lake, but in Utah, is that one, everybody thinks that you hate your mission, which is so not true. Everybody will ask you, they're like, I'm sorry that you got called to Salt Lake, or they'll ask you, like, were you disappointed when you found out you were going here? And you're like, no, because this is the best mission. It's so awesome. But they also think that there's not any work to do. They think we just, I guess, bike around all day and smile at people or whatever it is. There's tons of work to do in Utah, but especially in Salt Lake. Only about 70%, only about 30% of the population are members of the church, and of that, only about 30% are active members of the church. So there's a lot of work to do, and there's a lot of success as well in the Salt Lake missions. So like I said, I served in the East Mission, the Salt Lake City East Mission, which was the best mission. But there's 5 missions in Salt Lake. And so that kind of shows you, in Salt Lake alone, but there's just how much work there is to be done, that it's enough to keep 5 missions occupied and busy in the Lord's work. In the Salt Lake City East Mission, there are no temples in the boundaries, which is super, super sad. But we are spoiled with them being so close. we get to go to the Salt Lake City Temple. That's the temple that we used on the mission. And before that, we used to be able to go to the Jordan River Temple, which is being rededicated soon. Let's see. In the mission, very rarely will you just cover a single ward, let alone share a ward with another set of missionaries. Usually you cover stakes. And sometimes it's multiple stakes, not just one. Unless you're in Wyoming, then you have a better chance of seeing some more missionaries around with you. Another thing about the mission is that you can be called to speak English or Spanish. There's tons of different language branches and wards here in Salt Lake, and so they're split up among the missions. But the East Mission, you can get put into the different language wards, and then you get to learn those languages. So there's a Korean ward, there's Burmese, Chinese, Japanese, there's a Thai and Laotian speaking ward, there's a Swahili speaking. There's just tons of amazing opportunities here in Salt Lake, and that's just in the East Mission. We used to have American Sign Language as well. There's just tons all over Salt Lake. But so that's an exciting thing, is you can get thrown into, all of a sudden you have to learn how to speak Swahili and teach people about Jesus in Salt Lake. So that's kind of fun mission fact. Food in Utah is not what I expected. I expected like tons of like super like, I don't know, like Hawaiian haystacks and like those good like super, I don't know what word I'm trying to get at here, but just like the super yummy food, and the food was good. But there's definitely a lot of things that are unique to Utah. Lots of casseroles. There's this chicken thing that people like to do a lot, and it's got this like red sauce on it. I don't know what it is, but they do that one a lot. But the biggest thing in Utah is the Jell-O. And you think people are joking around, but I had green Jell-O with carrots on my mission. And Jell-O salad, and sometimes people would bring us out Jell-O salad as salad and dessert. So it was a 2-in-1 for dinner. I don't know if there's really anything else that's unique to Utah besides the green Jell-O. Lots of cookies. People feed you well here in Utah. I think when I first started my mission, our mission president's wife said that it was on average like a 40-pound weight gain for the mission, which I guess is why they have us on bikes, right? So I started off my mission in Cottonwood Heights, and I served in one stake for a transfer, and then I was moved to the stake next door that we already covered in the trio, my first transfer. And so it was super fun. I really got to know those members a lot. Cottonwood Heights, it's kind of hard to find new investigators up there. But the people are amazing. I loved everyone that I got to teach up there, and I loved the members so much, and it was definitely one of my favorites. It's close to my heart, is being in Cottonwood Heights. It's really, really super cold up there. We were at the mouth of Big Cottonwood Canyon, and we got to go up to Brighton and give talks in church up there in the church building that's in the parking lot of the ski resort. So you get to see the skiers up on the mountain and take the sacrament at the same time. So that was fun. But every time that they would take us up to the branch, the Brighton branch, I'd always be scared out of my mind because of all the snow and like up in the canyon, and it was just super cold and super scary. But it was fun. It definitely stayed a lot colder up there, which was nice when it was hotter outside, but it was not so fun during the winter. So up in Cottonwood Heights, in the little section I was in, there wasn't a whole lot. Again, we only covered the one stake at a time, and so you think that that's going to be a big, huge boundary, but it's just really like maybe a mile, a couple blocks is the stakes. And even then, those are the bigger stakes, are the ones that are up towards the mountain. But it was really pretty up there. Brighton is an amazing place to go see. There's a lot of wildlife up there. I luckily did not have to encounter a whole lot. But it's beautiful. The ski resorts, they're beautiful, and just the trees and the pines. Yeah, I don't have a whole lot on Cottonwood Heights. I mean, it's mostly housing, but it's an amazing place to see, so go visit because it's awesome. You will not regret it. And the people are great. The members are just the sweetest people in the world, and so are the non-members. Everyone's just so sweet up there. So let's see, I lived in Murray on my mission for about 8 months, so it was like a nice solid chunk. So I served in a couple of different stakes there. So I had the opportunity to, in Murray, I covered 2 stakes at once for a transfer. And me and my companion were still on a bike, and we were just a little sad that we didn't get a car, but it was awesome. I love riding a bike. It's like the funnest thing as a missionary. It's not so fun in the winter, but it's fun. Yeah, so we got to cover the 2 stakes, and even though we complained about riding the bikes, it was really only like 20 blocks that we had to ride, so it wasn't a big deal. Murray is awesome. Murray is just this cute little city, just kind of hidden there, but there's tons to do. There's tons to see. It's kind of hard as a missionary talking about the fun things to do in your area, just because you don't get to do a lot of the fun things. You get to do other fun things, spiritually fun. But no, there's just tons in Murray, and the members are just the sweetest. Yeah, Murray is really nice because it has a couple of the public transit stations, and so it was really easy. If in our mission we got to go down to Temple Square a lot and use the facilities there to teach our investigators or the less active members that we were teaching. We could take them downtown to Temple Square with us and visit with the Temple Square sisters and use the resources that were down there. And so it was super easy in Murray because you just had to run over to tracks and hop on and get downtown in a couple, like 20 minutes. So that was nice. There's a lot. There's a mall. We never got to go inside them because that was our mission rule, but there's a mall. There's tons of stores. There's lots of food places, which is really nice. Murray, I think, is known for just being its own like little self-city. It's a really old city from what I remember, is that it used to be all like orchards and like farming and like all of that cute stuff. And so there's Murray Park. That's a super, super pretty place. There's lots of really nice parks here. There's this one thing that I can't remember what it's called because I never went there. Yeah, but Murray's known just for being this cute little old town that's just kind of holding on there, and it's it keeps growing, and it's got lots of fun stuff to do. So I served in Rock Springs. So the way that it worked out with the transfers is I only had to be in Rock Springs for 3 weeks, but it was rough. So I had left Cottonwood Heights to go to Rock Springs, and so in Cottonwood Heights, the snow was melting. I had put my boots away, I just had to have on a sweater. I didn't have to have on my jacket. And in Rock Springs, it's super, super cold and windy there. Like so windy. If you don't tie your hair back, the wind will tie it up for you. But it was fun. There are great members in Rock Springs as well. There's a lot of work to do in Wyoming, and it's an amazing place to be. Yeah, with that being said, Rock Springs is just a little corner town, and it's just super interesting place to be. It's really fun as if a couple of the areas in Rock Springs, well, in Wyoming in general, you get to cover other little cities that are nearby. But the area that I got to serve in Rock Springs, we got to cover a little town called Farson. And we got to cover Eden as well. And so they were like an hour maybe north of Rock Springs, and they are like so small. They're so cute. I remember me and my companion, we drove around for hours the first day that we went up to Farson because we couldn't find anything. We found the Merc, which if you go there, you'll know the Merc. Stop there. It's really good. And then we found the church, and that's all we could find. There's no street signs, there's no house numbers. You either know how to get around or you don't. So finally we found someone who clued us in, and they brought us over to the branch president there, and we were able to kind of figure it out. But it's one of those places where people will tell you, like, yeah, like that person lives down this street if you turn left, and then they're by the house with the 2 green trees, and you're like, like, what does that even mean? So super easy to get lost in Farson and Eden. Yeah, the Merc in Farson, so definitely a must-see. There's not a whole lot there. I think they have a little sign, it's like the Crossroads of the West or something like that. Super, super small town. I think there's like 300 people there. But the Merc is awesome. You'll find really funny Wyoming like souvenirs there. And they have ice cream. So you have to go to the Merc for the ice cream, which is what we had been told. Okay, so I go in there, and my companion, she orders a baby scoop. And I'm like, a baby scoop? Like, I don't want no tiny little thing of ice cream. And I see them pile it on, and it's like these 2 huge scoops, and it's the baby scoop. But the biggest one you can get there is you can get an entire quart of ice cream on a cone from the Merc. But they make all their ice cream, and it's super yummy. They have tons of different flavors. But I would say Farson is known for the Merc. It's good stuff there. Rock Springs itself is, like I said, really flat and really windy. I think there's a lot of people in oil out there, so that's a big part of the town. But there are amazing people there. There's some really sweet people. Also, another tip on the way to Rock Springs, so this is outside of Green River. There's Little America. They also have ice cream. So apparently that's all you do in Rock Springs is missionaries eat ice cream. But it's super fun. So there's tons to do in Wyoming. It's a great place. But again, I was grateful to get out of the wind after 3 weeks. So I loved my mission so much. I have a lot of funny stories that happened, whether it was with companions or distracting memories or what it might be. Yeah. Okay, so I actually just told this story the other day. So on Thanksgiving, on your mission, it's a super fun day. You get to spend the whole week helping people bake and like get ready for their Thanksgiving and, in between your other teaching appointments. But on Thanksgiving, a lot of members love to have you over. A lot of people love to have you over and the people you're working with. It's a super sweet experience. And so my first Thanksgiving on the mission, I was with my follow-up trainer, and she was a goober. I love her to pieces. But we ended up not having a whole, we had a lot of stuff to do that day. And so we didn't really have like a dinner. And so finally it was getting later in the night, and I was like, sister, I am so hungry. Like, we have to go home and eat something. Like, we can't go all day without eating. So we went home and we had a chicken pot pie with our landlady, who I think she gave us some leftover stuffing, and that was our dinner. And it was super funny. We had a good time with it. But the lady we lived with, she asked us if we'd let her dog and her son's dog out when we got home, because they were going to be out for the night. And so we were like, sure, no problem. So we come home at night, and I'm putting all my stuff down, and my companion goes to let the dogs out the back door, and they won't go out. And she's like, sister, I think they go out the front. And I'm like, no, I don't think so. And she's like, no, yeah, they do. Come on. So I'm like, okay. So we go out the front door, and off they go running. Okay, so it's 9 o'clock at night, and it's Thanksgiving, and we have to chase these dogs down the street, okay? So we're running as fast as we can, and this one dog did not like us. But finally, we catch the dogs, and we're trying to get back in before curfew. So we get the dogs, and we walk them back to the house, and the door had locked behind us, and our keys were inside. And so luckily we had our cell phone, and we had our coats, and that was it. And so we're calling the person that we live with, and nothing's happening. And so we're calling all of these members, and everybody's celebrating Thanksgiving, so nobody had their phones. And so we're sitting outside on the driveway. at like after 9 o'clock at night with these two dogs on Thanksgiving, and we called some other missionaries, and they were sending this sister, training leader, and her companion to come and help us out. And then in the meantime, while they were coming, the other dog ran off again, and it was the dog that her son's dog. And so we like take off running after it, and this dog was not having any of it and kept like growling at us, and it was a little speedier than we were, and so we lost the dog. And so we're like, this isn't funny anymore. And so we called another member who luckily answered her phone, and she was kind enough to end her plans for the evening to come and help us out. And so she came and picked us up while we searched for the dog. And then the sisters came and helped us get back into the house. But that's how we spent my first Thanksgiving on the mission, was chasing dogs down after curfew. We finally got in at about 10 that night in the cold. So that was funny. Let's see, another story. So when I was in Cottonwood Heights, we had to get our car repaired. Somebody had hit it, and so there's some scratches, and so they decided to get the car repaired. And so we go and we drop our car off, and the mission office elder comes to pick us up from the car place, and he's like, sisters, I have another car for you, like, don't worry about it. And we're like, oh, okay, sweet. And then like while we're in the car with him, somebody calls him, and they're like, yeah, like we just took the extra car because we needed it. And so he's like, well, sorry, sisters, like you're going to have to walk. And we're like, that's okay. Like that's what we thought in the first place. So by this time, it's my fourth transfer. And so I was with a missionary who was out just one transfer less than me. And she had just come from a walking area, so she was gung-ho about walking. And I had been spoiled in a car the entire time, so I was less than excited. But yeah, so we were walking around and we were doing our thing, and up in Cottonwood Heights, it's very hilly. There's huge hills. And so one night we went to our appointment, and at the end of the appointment, the people that we went to the appointment with, they'd always offer us a ride. And we had another appointment right at 7. And so we were like, okay, like they're going to give us a ride, like not a big deal, like we'll make it to the other appointment in time. And that was the one time that they didn't offer us a ride. And so we're like, ah. So we're like hurrying as fast as we can, walking as fast as we can down Wasatch Boulevard at 7 o'clock at night in the winter. And we are going, and there's two ways to get to this house we were going to. One's to go up this giant hill, and the other one, it's a little bit less of a hill. So I call out to my companion, I'm like, hey, like if we keep going straight, we don't have to go up this big hill, and we can go up a different one. And she didn't hear me, which I think was the Lord, so we'll get to that in a second. But yeah, so she didn't hear me, and she starts going up this giant hill, and I'm like, okay. So we start going up this hill, and it felt like it was straight up like this. And so we finally get to the top, and we're catching our breath, and our appointment texts us, and they cancel. So we walked up this big hill for nothing. And so we sat there in the snow on a snowbank. We laid there as we caught our breath, and we're like, okay, now where are we going to go? Because we had a list that we were going to go work through, but it was in the car, which is at the shop. So that wasn't very well thought out on our part. Yeah, so we were like, okay, what are we going to do? And so my companion, she says, well, let's knock doors. And I'm like, okay, where do we start? And she goes, that one, and just points at a random door. And so we go, and we walk up to this door, and we knock on it. And there's a big dog barking, and so we're like, oh, scary dog. But this man answers the door, and he like looks at us, and he kind of chuckles, and he's like, you know, I've lived here for 2 years, and I've been waiting for you to show up. And after we picked our jaws back up off the floor, we went inside, and we were able to teach him and his wife parts of the restoration. And it was awesome how I remember we left that day, and we were like, wow, like we were totally led by Heavenly Father. It was like Nephi, led by the Spirit, not knowing beforehand the things which we would do. Is that, you know, all these things happen, is that, you know, it just so happened that somebody came and took that car, so we couldn't drive around that day. And it just so happened that those people didn't offer to give us a ride that night, and that our appointment ended up canceling, and that my companion, that we left that list in the car, but that my companion said, let's start with that house. And they said that we've been waiting for 2 years for sisters or for missionaries to show up. And so that was a really touching moment for me, especially at the beginning of my mission and serving where I was it was an amazing experience. Okay, so another kind of funny story. So there was one time I was with my companion, and we were teaching this sweet little family in our area, and they were so funny. I remember when I first got to the area, she's like, "We got to go introduce you to these people. You got to see this family. Like, they're the greatest." And so we went over there, and it was a super unique situation. And so it was the mom and her son, and her oldest son was on his mission, and his younger brother wasn't baptized. And so that's what we were there for, is we were trying to see if he was ready. And so the brother that was on his mission got to Skype in to the lessons. And so it'd be me and my companion, and the computer with the elder and his companion, and then our investigator and his mom. And almost every week, we'd call the other missionaries and be like, how can we help your brother? Like, we are not sure what to do. Because every time, like, he'd accept everything we were saying, and then we'd invite him to be baptized, and he'd be like, no. And he'd never really give us a reason why. And we were like, dude, like, at least tell us why. And so one time we called his brother, and we had, like, prepared, like, this whole big lesson about, like, helping him see, like, we'd, like, been praying over his concerns. Like, we had all these scriptures and all of these things to, like, tie back into his life. And so we were all so ready for this lesson. And so we go in there and we are talking to him, and we start the lesson. And before we go anywhere, we wanted to start it off by inviting him to be baptized again. And then, once he told us no, we'd explain to him about that, and, we'd try to help him work through his concerns. So we said, hey, would you be willing to follow the example of Jesus Christ and be baptized? And he says, yeah. And me and my companion, we were like, what? We didn't know what to say after that. And he was laughing at us because all of us were like, what? Because he had just, somehow the Spirit had touched his heart so that he was ready to be baptized. And so that was kind of a fun experience, just because nobody was expecting it, and he threw us all off our guard. We had to prepare this whole lesson, and he didn't need it anymore. Another story, which was really cool to see how it came about. I was with my companion, and we had decided to be extra obedient this one week to try to help out our area a little more. So we got up, and we were, like, working out super hard, for the entire 30 minutes, and we were just going around through our day. And then finally it was Sunday, and we were going through Sunday, and we got a call. We had a bunch of care center branches. So we got a call from one of the branch presidents, and he's like, hey, I have someone who wants to get baptized. And we're like, what? And he's like, yeah, like, here's the name and, like, the room number. Like, go ahead and check it out. So we're like, okay. So we go, and that's where we met George and Steve. I love George and Steve so much. So they were in the care center, and George was just this cutest little old guy in the world. He was 70, and you never would have guessed it. But he was so cute. And Steve had been George's friend. They lived across the hall from each other in the care center. And Steve had slowly been starting to teach George about the gospel, to the point where George decided he wanted to be baptized before we had even met him. So we came in, and we were able to put him on date for baptism that same day. And 3 weeks later, he was baptized. But it was definitely not without opposition. It was tricky getting that to happen. So George is in a wheelchair, and he was so excited about being baptized, he really didn't care about any of the other things. So we had to figure out how to get him transported to the stake center, and then how to get him into the font and back out of the font. with a wheelchair. But we were able to figure it all out. But I think one of the coolest moments on my mission, baptisms are probably one of the best moments on your mission. Your first baptism is amazing, just watching it happen. You just feel the Spirit so strongly. But definitely during George's baptism, and Steve got to be a part of it as well. But because George was in the wheelchair, we ended up having to have, I think, 5 or 6 people help carry George into the font and to lift him back up out of the water and take him out of the font, which was awesome because you got to look into the waters and see 6 people dressed in white. And that, I think, was probably one of my favorite times on my mission. Is I love George so much. He was just so excited about the gospel and everything that we taught him. He was just so ready for. And so I think that's another really cool thing that happens is you see the people that Heavenly Father has prepared, and right for those perfect times. But jumping back to the whole me and my companion try to be extra obedient, is after we put George on date, we were like, it's because we worked out for the whole 30 minutes, like, woohoo, like, so it was funny. My advice for when you go out on your mission is, 1, to have an awesome attitude about it, because I know it probably sounds cliche, but it changes a lot when you have a better outlook on your mission. Don't let the people get to you and they say, oh, how lame, you got called to Utah, like everybody's already Mormon, because it's not true. It's an amazing place to be. I remember my sister was on her mission when I got my call, and we ended up overlapping. I left on her year mark. But I remember I emailed her the video of me opening my call, and she emailed back and she was like, oh, like, don't be disappointed. I was already disappointed for you. Like, it'll be fine. And I was like, I wasn't disappointed. Like, this is going to be awesome. And it was. It's a great place to serve. It's a great place to be. And there's just tons of blessings and tons of work to do. So you are definitely very much needed. Other advice would be to relax. At the beginning of my mission, I talked about it, but I was like a super big chicken. I was scared all the time. I was scared to say the wrong things. But Heavenly Father would never let you say anything so wrong that it would ruin someone's chances. You are blessed to have the Spirit as a missionary. And so roll with it. Say as much as you can while the Spirit is guiding your words. Another thing as far as preparing for your mission goes, would just be to enjoy it, to be ready so that you can leave everything behind so that you can come and serve, and to not worry, because it's a great place to be, to serve here in the Salt Lake Valley, but in the Salt Lake City East Mission. Advice for on the mission, I would say, would be to be obedient. Sometimes it's hard, and nobody's going to lie and tell you that everything on your mission is easy, because it's not, and everybody knows it, but it's so worth it. And if you are obedient and if you are working your best, that eliminates so much of the problems that can arise from just being a missionary. I don't know. Obedience was such a big part for me, and you can definitely feel the times when you're kind of losing out on that. Any other advice would probably be excited that you're here, be happy, know that you're loved, that this is probably one of the greatest missions because of how many people just love seeing missionaries. You can hardly walk down a street one day without somebody honking and waving at you. Another advice is, people are going to honk behind you and it's going to scare you, but they mean it because they love you. There's so many amazing things that happen in this mission. And getting to know the other missionaries and just being here, there's a lot of blessings. Advice for sister missionaries. One is be excited to come here. I don't know if I'm even doing a good job of telling you how awesome this mission is, but it is. And the members, they love missionaries here, but they especially love sisters. They are so kind and so sweet and giving. I had a lot of members that just do a lot for the sisters, and at Christmas time it's really cute. You'd be walking down the street and like 3 people will pull over in the course of one little strip and hand you a plate of cookies. They're like, sisters, we were looking for you. And so you get all these cookies and you try to say that, oh, we're not going to eat all of these, but you do. Be excited. It's a great place to serve, and it's especially great to be a sister missionary here. Clothing and packing. I'd say it's kind of difficult, like having like just one kind of set of clothes for a Salt Lake mission, because in Utah you have this really fun thing where it's either super, super hot in the summer and it's super, super cold in the winter. So you can't really it's not easy to transform your clothes into being able to fit both seasons. There's tons of opportunities here in Utah as well. You're not stuck anywhere too far away from civilization. There's stores you can buy the clothes that you need. A lot of times just a cardigan or a thick sweater and some tights will fit you well for the winter. And a long, nice coat is nice as well. And I think just in general for any mission is you can wear cute clothes, you can wear the bright colors. I think people would much rather talk to someone who's bright and bubbly than someone who's in all black and gray, which is what my winter clothes consisted of sometimes. Safety tips. I was super lucky. I never really had any run-ins on my mission. Tracks can be a little interesting sometimes, but nothing really ever happens. Just there's some interesting people who don't like missionaries sometimes, but you'll get that anywhere. But as far as being safe, just make sure you're praying and you'll be fine. There's a couple areas where I served and we'd be walking underneath freeways at night. And there's times you're walking, you're like, what would happen if, something happened right now? But it's always fine. There's never any reason to worry about anything. And anyways, there's one time there was this member, and somebody had been walking ahead of me and my companion. And so he pulled over and he's like, sisters, he's like, I have a weird feeling. I just want you to stay here for a second. And he's like, until that guy leaves. And so this guy keeps walking and he's like, okay, he's like, are you sisters going to be okay? We're like, yeah, we're fine. And so we start walking down the road, and a couple minutes later he comes back with his wife in the car to give us a ride to where we were going, so we didn't have to walk. So it's great. There's really nothing too scary. Even in Rock Springs or anywhere, most people are inside at night, so you're good. Health and well-being. If the 40-pound weight gain thing is still a thing, I'd be careful about that. That would be my advice for that. Members are very sweet, and they love to offer you all kinds of goodies, and it's okay to say, I'm okay. Because you don't want to hurt their feelings, but it won't hurt their feelings. Health and well-being, there's nothing really too much to worry about here, especially, you're staying stateside, and it's Salt Lake City. So you're usually pretty fine. There's nothing that, a couple cough drops or a Band-Aid won't fix. I would say in the summer, sunscreen. I constantly smelled like sunscreen all summer, and people will point it out to you. But it's definitely worth it when you're outside biking or walking for that amount of time. You're bound to get a little crispy. I am super grateful for my mission every day. My mission really changed things for me. For my mission, being a Mormon, being a member of the church was just kind of a thing, and I knew that I needed to go on my mission, but I didn't know why. And I remember going to the MTC and feeling just absolutely overwhelmed. I was like, I don't know any of this. How can I teach this to other people? But it comes. And Heavenly Father doesn't expect you to know everything, but He expects you to try. So for that, I'm super grateful for my mission, because if you can get past the MTC, you can definitely make it onto your mission. But it changed my life. It helped me learn the gospel well enough to not only teach it to others, but to apply it in my life. And I remember thinking about this earlier today, is that it used to just be a label, it used to just be a thing I do, but now it's something that's a part of my life. It's something I do every day, is be a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And that's what my mission did for me, is it changed it into something that's just like, oh, well, that's a nice thing to do, to something that's like, I know I need to do this because I know that this is true. So yeah, I just want to bear my testimony that Heavenly Father knows you perfectly, and He perfectly knows where to send you. And He knows what's going to help you the most and help you the best. And this mission needs you. Or wherever your mission is, you are needed there. And you need the people there as well. There are so many people that have changed my lives on my mission, whether it was companions, people I just happened to talk to on the street, or people that I got to work with. They are meant for you, and you're meant for them. So don't forget that for a second. Yeah, I just want to bear my testimony that I know that Heavenly Father knows us, that He knows you, and He loves you. And I know that the gospel is true, that it's something that when we do live it, when we do take it into our hearts, it will transform our lives into something more than we ever imagined. And for that, I'm super grateful for my mission, because it gave me that knowledge, and it gives me that drive to keep doing something every day. And then, let's see, I am super grateful to have served in Salt Lake. I'm grateful for all the people that I met and the experiences that I had, even the ones that weren't my favorite at the time. Life gets better. It all works out. Heavenly Father loves all of His children, no matter where you're at in life, whether you're preparing to go on a mission, you're on your mission, or after, even 6 months after, like I am, or 10 years or 50 years, is that Heavenly Father never stops loving you. And that's something that I keep trying to remind myself every day, is that Heavenly Father knows me. So life's going okay, and I'm grateful for all the people that helped me on my mission. Other than that, I don't think I really have anything else to say. The Salt Lake City East mission is, of course, everyone's going to say this, but it's really true about the Salt Lake City East mission, is that it's the best mission in the church. There's so much to do, and there's so much to see, and you're all needed, and the members love you. So love the members, be kind to them, help inspire them, and inspire yourself at the same time. Don't forget that missionary work isn't just an 18-month phase of your life or a 2-year phase of your life. It's an everyday thing. It's something that you can keep trying to do. And it's hard. So have sympathy with people who, I remember on my mission, I'd get frustrated a lot of times when I'm like, well, why didn't you go see this person? Like, we gave you the name yesterday. And then, as a return missionary, as somebody who's now in a member's shoes, people can't get to everything in 2-hour notice. So be patient, but know that there's work to do here. Be excited and love the mission. Your mission will change you in more ways than you could believe. So I say those things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.